You're tuning into the Life Cycle Strategy Plan on Vyvanse Lisdexamphetamine on Marketing and Sales. This is Gary Chan. I'm an MD psychiatrist and I'm doing my Health Sector MBA. You can check out this link. It's really great. It's on the medical neuroscience of ADHD. And I'd like to start on why is the value proposition of drugs important. Well, in the European market, there are cost concerns. In addition to clinical effectiveness concerns that might lead to the erosion of commercial value. Before I continue, I'd like to think about what value means. If you go to Walmart, you're looking for low cost. If you buy a Mercedes-Benz, you're looking for high quality. If you buy a burger at McDonald's, you might be looking for quick, fast delivery of service and food. In the case of drug value proposition, it depends on whether you're a physician, a patient, a parent, or a child, in particular for the case of ADHD. The mechanism of action for Vyvanse is it targets the dopamine system and it reduces ADHD symptoms of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsiveness. So behavioral modification. But for parents, they might be concerned about psychostimulants and the effect it might have on their child. For a child, it might help them study better or be more focused. For a physician, they might see the medication as targeting a well-known system with a well-planned out mechanism of action. The marketing strategy for this medication incorporates all four of these in the product market opportunity matrix. Market penetration into the childhood ADHD market, development into the adult ADHD market, product development strategy into areas of major depressive disorder, schizophrenia, and eating disorders. Diversification strategy Shire has taken on by including Intuitive in their drug package for ADHD. In the life cycle stage for Vyvanse, we're looking at growth. Vyvanse has over $1 billion of revenue in 2012, a 28% growth. Compare that to Intuitive at $288 million of 29% growth. And Adderall XR, which is the second generation, the prior generation of Vyvanse, at $429 million, it's contracted 19%. Overall, Shire has achieved a 12% growth. On the very bottom of this screen, I want to share with you Elvance is the same thing as Vyvanse in the European market. As I've discussed, Elvance has been launched in 8 European markets, and on the bottom line here, Vyvanse is the same thing as Vyvanse in Brazil. R&D novel indications or pipelines for Vyvanse include major depressive disorder, binge eating disorder, and negative symptoms of schizophrenia. Shire has expended $965 million in 2012. This is not just for behavioral health, but also for GI, human genetic therapies, and regenerative medicine, because in the annual report they haven't split off the R&D expenditures into particular areas. It's very hard to say how much money they're spending for particularly behavioral health. These drugs are patented, and when they go off patent, they lose a lot of their value. So accountants have taken this into account, and they say that the intangible assets, the finite intangible asset value of the company is $2.1 billion, or $2,157 million. There are lawsuits involved with the company that will be discussed in a different section. And product sales, 4 different drugs offered by Shire: Vyvanse, Adderall XR, Intuitive, and Equisim, all for ADHD. The Vyvanse marketing strategy, before we talk more about that, it's good to go back to its predecessor, the Adderall XR, with a 25% market share. They were able to market this using a reimbursement strategy because this medication was Schedule II. It's a controlled substance which can't be left as a drug sample with doctors. They decided to sell it by offering it as a voucher. A patient could take the voucher to the pharmacy, and the medication could be received by paying a nominal copay, let's say $10 a month, over the first year, and thereafter the patient would have to take the cost either out of pocket or hopefully their insurance could pay for it. Through the reimbursement strategy, Vyvanse had a compliance program, and 80% opted in, which allowed patients to receive reminders of taking the medication. The marketing efforts also included about 600 reps, or 560 to be more exact. It included marketing Vyvanse and Intuniv, but depending on the location, Vyvanse might be the #1 spot or Intuniv. Intuniv, as a side note, is a good medication for the 30% that don't respond, and also for parents who are concerned about stimulant side effects. They were marketed primarily to primary care physicians, particularly pediatricians. The launch and sales of Vyvanse, once again going back to Adderall and Adderall XR, there was a 4-month transitional period where XR was released, and there was only 4 months before Adderall would go generic. So they really had to aggressively market Adderall XR and get that to be used. They were very successful. They achieved a 30% market share, $864 million of sales in 2006 before patent expiration. And Adderall XR faced competition with Johnson & Johnson's Concerta Risperidone, which is more really for schizophrenia. The launch and sales of Vyvanse had a 22-month period before XR would go generic, so it wasn't as constraining. And the pricing strategy was $3.40 per day, which is the same as Adderall. The key selling point was it had less abuse potential. Once again, Vyvanse is a 3rd-generation replacement, also called a line extension. In the second paragraph here, we see that Adderall XR plunged 74% after generics hit the market. I'd like to talk a little bit about insurance and how that has an effect on medication costs, technological change, and what it does is it increases the cost of technology, but it also encourages product innovation and process innovation. Although these technological costs, technological changes can add to cost. Insurance also decreases consumer search behavior. Consumers don't look for the lowest cost because they can pay $10 a month for a $200 drug, and they could choose to get a $10 generic, but they prefer to get a higher quality product. This is changing as insurance companies look to increase the deductibles. So a drug company really has to look and see if insurance is going to cover, and looking into the future with the Affordable Care Act, there might be a shift in how we can provide lower cost drugs to a greater number of people. There are 16 patents on Vyvanse. They expire in 2023. Compare that to Intuniv, which expires firstly in 2015. It hit the market in 2009, so it's only been a 6-year period before patent expiration occurs. Profit projections: ADHD market is expected to contract from $5 billion to $4.1 billion. Sometimes we're not so good at predicting the future, but these are some predictions. And Vyvanse right now dominates the US market, while Intuniv is expected to play a larger role in Europe because of less abuse potential and it being a non-stimulant. My SWOT analysis: the strengths. This recaps a lot of the stuff I've talked about earlier, but patents expire in 2023. There's low abuse potential. There's higher market share. The weaknesses are that it's stimulant side effects, there are higher costs, and no increased efficacy over competition. Threats: the competition includes generics for Adderall XR, Procentra, which is a liquid amphetamine, atomoxetine, which acts on norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor, which is not a Schedule II, so it doesn't require, they could leave these medications with the doctor as product samples. The side effects of suicidal thoughts. Competitors include Johnson & Johnson's Consta, and opportunities are Vyvanse could be developed or evolved into a fourth generation medication, and a market diversification strategy. I've talked about MDD, schizophrenia, and eating disorders as other areas where the medication could be developed. I want to talk a little bit about social media. It hasn't really been tapped as a way of marketing Vyvanse. Notice that the Facebook has 290 likes for Vyvanse. Vyvanse Swag on Twitter has 1,987 followers. It's sort of a mixed bag though. Think of the benefits: lower costs, word of mouth buzz, but what are the risks? Hundreds of thousands of people can conspire to put a company's reputation, brand, or product on a pedestal or drag it through the dirt. This is a quote from Adding Social Media to the Marketing Mix. I thought it was really appropriate. And you really have to think, are these social media methods going to add positive or negative buzz? Another question you have to ask is, does EWAM work? Here's another quote. People are more inclined to talk about things they purchase rarely and use publicly, such as holidays or cars, whereas things they buy regularly and use privately, such as toothpaste brands, are barely mentioned. This is a key factor when deciding whether or not an EWAM initiative is appropriate. So think, are parents going to talk about the latest behavioral modification medication on Twitter or Facebook? And are children going to talk about the latest drug that's helped them focus and do their homework, or reduce their inattentiveness? The 4 P's and C's of marketing, I think I've covered. I just wanted to put this slide in and make sure I've nailed these down. And I'll leave you with these thoughts here. Charles Dean, a psychiatrist in Silicon Valley, says there's a rise in ADHD due to marketing. In 1998, 1 in 250 children were on antidepressants, and 4 years later, 1 in 40. This 30-fold increase cannot be completely explained by prevalence or incidence of depression in children, he argues. And so in the literature, we see a short-term efficacy of these medications, but the long-term effects are unknown. Thank you for listening, and that concludes my talk on sales and marketing.